Bob's going to come in
other
here.
people allotted time.
All right, thank you guys thank you Portsmouth for coming out this evening. I await a motion to postpone the remainder of the non-public until the end of the council meeting.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second. And we will need a roll call vote.
Assistant Mayor Kelly,
Yes.
Councilor Tabor,
Yes.
Councilor Denton,
Yes.
Councilor Moreau,
Yes.
Councilor Bagley,
Yes.
Councilor Lombardi,
Yes.
Councilor Blaylock,
Yes.
Councilor Cook,
Yes.
Mayor McCachran.
Yes.
It's unanimous
And now we need a roll call.
for attendance. Flip the page.
This is one of those weird things. We are all here, but we've already voted on something. We need to state again that we are here.
Mayor McCachran,
Here.
Assistant Mayor Kelly,
Here.
Councilor Tabor,
Here.
Councilor Denton,
Here.
Councilor Moreau,
Here.
Councilor Bagley,
Here.
Councilor Lombardi,
Here.
Councilor Blaylock,
Here.
Councilor Cook.
Here.
Thank you. For the invocation, I would ask that Portsmouth think of the citizens of Ukraine as they fight to defend their homeland and really for democracy itself, the right to live and exist the way that they choose. They're up against insurmountable odds, but it seems as though their spirit is something that we can all take pride in, elevate, and put our own struggles in the context of what it means to struggle for the very life that you wish to live. And so with that, I'd ask a moment of silence. Thank you. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We have a proclamation in honor of Women's History Month. We have a very storied history when it comes to women, so this is a longer proclamation. Whereas the celebration of Women's History Month grew out of a week-long celebration of women's contributions to culture, history, and society organized by the School District of Sonoma, California in 1978. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter issued the first presidential proclamation declaring the second week of March as National Women's History Week, and the U.S. Congress passed a resolution establishing a national celebration. And whereas in 1987, the National Women's History Project successfully petitioned Congress to expand the event through the entire month of March to reflect on the countless recorded and unrecorded way women have shaped United States history and highlight the significant timeline of women's history milestones that far precedes the founding of the United States. And whereas each year the President of the United States recognizes the month of March as Women's History Month to celebrate the contributions women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made to the growth and strength of the United States, it is also a time to recognize the specific achievements women have made over the course of American history, including serving as leaders at the forefront of the suffrage, abolitionist, emancipation, labor, and civil rights movements, and whereas Portsmouth, as all cities, towns, and villages everywhere, depend on the achievements and contribution of women from the original Abenaki women of the Seacoast region to the economic, cultural, and social leaders of today. And whereas Portsmouth has a particularly proud and distinctive history of women in leadership positions. Mary Carey Dondero began this legacy when she was elected as Portsmouth's first female city councilor in 1940, and then subsequently elected as our first female mayor in 1945. Her daughter Eileen Dondero Foley followed her trailblaze when she was elected mayor in 1968. Mayor Foley's tenure of character and competence is evidenced by her record of being the longest-serving mayor in Portsmouth history, serving our community for 8 distinguished terms between the years of 1968 and 1997. Mayor Foley was succeeded in her esteemed position by Mayor Mary McCachran Keenan and Mayor Evelyn Sorrell. This leadership surely influenced the many other women who have and continue to honorably serve Portsmouth as city councilors and board and commission chairs. And whereas today, Assistant Mayor Joanna Kelly has been entrusted by the residents of Portsmouth to continue this storied tradition, and the city is being skillfully led by City Manager Karen Conard, the first female manager in its history. And whereas we are resolved to affirm the city's mission to foster a diverse, fiscally sound, and harmonious community which offers a full range of housing, business, culture, and recreation opportunities for all of its residents, businesses, and visitors. Now, therefore, I, Daglin McCachran, Mayor of the City of Portsmouth, on behalf of the members of the City Council and citizens of Portsmouth, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2022 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire as Women's History Month, and urge all citizens to reflect on the essential contributions of women to the past, present, and future of Portsmouth. Given with my hand and the seal of the City of Portsmouth on the 7th day of March 2022. Thank you. All right. Next up is acceptance of minutes from the February 7th, 2022, February 10th, 2022, and February 22nd, 2022, or 2022. Sample motion, move to accept and approve the minutes of the February 7th, 10th, and February 22nd City Council meetings.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And now for what I am looking forward to here, we have the esteemed privilege of being in a New England is good at a lot of sports dynasties. You know, the Pats, you know, the Red Sox since I became a little older. The Celtics, I was able to see Jason Tatum drop 54 points the other day. But we also have another back-to-back-to-back champion, and that is Audubon Verendun, or Addy as he goes by. The trophy for New Hampshire's top speller has been brought back to Portsmouth once again. Audubon Verendun, a 7th grade student at Portsmouth Middle School, won the 69th annual Union Leader New Hampshire State Spelling Bee in Concord last week. This was the 3rd consecutive State Spelling Bee championship. In June, Addy will vie for the coveted title of Scripps National Spelling Bee Champion, which will be held in Washington, D.C., and hosted by actor and director LeVar Burton. You guys might remember him from Reading Rainbow. I certainly do. Or Star Trek. Addy's mom and dad, Uma and Kumaran, are here tonight. I understand that you're already helping him practice for the Nationals. For those of you who want to learn to be a champion speller, they go through an Excel sheet that has close to 1,000 words on it, constantly throwing in new words. I don't know if I could honestly say I could spell 1,000 words given to me on that without spell check. I want to thank the whole family for bringing such an honor to Portsmouth. You inspire us all. So if you could, please come up, because we have an award and we have this special coin. So in the city of Portsmouth, we don't offer a key to the city because we're the city of the open door. But we have these special coins that I hope you will keep with you, maybe in your pocket, as a token of that we're all rooting for you.
Keep up the good work, Eddie.
The good word.
Good word.
I wish there was going to be, there's not any really good spelling words that are coming up for the rest of the night, so don't feel as though you have to stay. If you have to get home and study, you're more than welcome to leave. But with that, I'm going to move on to public comment. We have six speakers. And do we have any on Zoom? I would just ask that you raise your hand. We'll accept hands for the next minute on Zoom. But would Chris Madden, sorry, Chris, you're from Raymond, so we're just going to ask you to wait till the end. Arthur Clow, please approach the microphone.
Good evening. Arthur Clow, 431 Pleasant Street. Whenever I start a new job, I'm asked to read the employee handbook and to sign off on it. How many of you read the city charter? Very good. Section 3.8, pecuniary interest. No elective or appointive officer or employee of the city of Portsmouth shall take part in any decision concerning the business of the city in which that person has a direct pecuniary interest which is greater than any other citizen or taxpayer aside from that officer or employer's salary. I watched the meeting from the 22nd. I saw at least one, if not three, violations of that ordinance. Assistant Mayor Kelly identified herself as a business owner that would benefit from the parcels of land that the city is going to rent out to them, including voting for a 50% reduction in that. She said, as someone who, to be very transparent, whose business would benefit from this lower cost fee, I'm one of those. That is a violation of our city charter. It's a serious matter. Secondly, when the conversation happened that involved the city attorney, he didn't quote the city charter in the pecuniary interest charge. He quoted the ethics, and he paraphrased it, and he injected into it. I am not, you have a greater interest in that ordinance than I do, and pretty much everybody else in this room. And there's also one other counselor I'm not sure about yet, but I believe that he also owns a restaurant and voted on it. There is a competitive advantage to having additional land for your business. There is a competitive disadvantage from not being able to get one of those pieces of land. So a conflict of interest is a situation in which a person in a position to derive personal benefit from actions or decisions made in their official capacity. That's exactly what you did. You violated the ordinance. The questions that I'm sitting on right now is whether to report these to the ethics board, and in one case to the office of I'm going to get the name wrong, but of professional conduct by the state of New Hampshire. This was a failure by every member up here to participate in that vote and to not stand up and say, this involves your business, this involves the fees for your business, you can't vote on it. You all failed the test of understanding the city charter. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Next up, Mark Brighton with the title of Follow-Up.
Mark Brighton, South Mill Street. If Mr. Cloud decides to file an ethics complaint, I will be signing it with him. I have known the city attorney for at least 2 decades, and I have known you, Mrs. Assistant Mayor, much less, but I consider both of you friends. And I'm angry that you put me in this position where I have to decide whether or not to sign an ethics complaint. I am angry about that. Ethics were a big part of the campaign. I remember being down at the South Church one night trying to understand a Scotsman with a thick accent with a mask over his face. That was not easy. Each of you needs at least a working knowledge of the charter, and it becomes obvious that that you don't. I mean, otherwise, it wouldn't have taken place. Lastly, Mr. Mayor, if Mr. Cloud decides to file an ethics complaint, don't blow it off, because that would just put a lie to everything. I mean, Esther Kennedy was brought before the ethics board for something much more ambiguous. This is just straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brighton. Next up, Hershey Hirschkopf, the subject of pride.
Hi, I'm Hershey.
Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah, Hershey Hirschkopf. You did just great. It's sort of silly, isn't it? It's a nickname. So I'm the executive director of Seacoast Outright. We are now ensconced at the community campus.
And sorry, are you your Portsmouth resident?
No, but
Okay,
I'm
could we just have to, do Portsmouth residents first and then have you speak.
sorry.
We'll get you back
I'm from
up
the great state of Maine.
in 3 minutes, 6 minutes or less. Peter Huda.
Peter Huda, 280 South Street. I'm going to be brief. My question is, why was the audit committee here? Why was it not announced? And where is your transparency on this subject? Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Next up is Bill Downey. With the topic of transparency.
Good evening, everybody. Bill Downey, 67 Bow Street. So last week I spoke about, I felt like there's some people representing the city that were putting their thumb on the scale when it came to the McIntyre. Tonight, I too am a bit disappointed. Sounds a little bit like a bitch session so far this evening, but it's unfortunate that I had to learn last week that the city entered into a new legal agreement or a transaction, which is not a surprise, but what's disappointing, there's a lack of transparency. So as an abutter, I have access to all the account over at Superior Court. And on the 15th, Sobo entered a withdrawal for the injunction. No surprise, right? To be expected after rescinding that you guys did. But on the 16th, the judge authorized it, and the 17th, it was certified. Why did I learn of this a week later? Why was it not mentioned in the last meeting on the 22nd? There was 5 days it should have been on the agenda as far as I'm concerned. Because without this transparency, democracy fails. We know how important that is these days. A concentration of decision-making is not good for our democratic process. I think we can all agree on that. But when it comes to the McIntyre, Mayor, as you know, we struggled in the early days when you guys assembled on getting information out on the website, and I know there's a lot on the city's plate. But this is not perfunctory, as Councilor Dwyer once said, because in October, the National Parks corresponded with us, and they rejected the plan. But it was repressed for 4 weeks. That ain't cool. There's a lot of similarities here. History doesn't repeat itself, but it's rhyming. So in order to maintain credibility and accountability, I'm asking you, Mayor, and the Council, to make sure this stuff gets up to us so we get it. Now, I know the newspaper's struggling. They don't have the kind of coverage they used to, but it's not on the website. I checked it today. I didn't hear it last Tuesday, the 22nd, so I'm wondering why that information was not shared. I look forward to your answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Next up, we have Barbara Masser. Will you please state your name and address?
Good evening, all. This is Barbara Massar. I'm the Executive Director of Pro Portsmouth. Our address is 909 Islington Street.
Barbara,
I'm here this evening.
The Portsmouth
Hello?
resident? Sorry. Yes, yes. Okay. Thank you. Continue.
Okay. Happily, I'm here this evening to let all of you and all of Portsmouth know that Pro Portsmouth is returning to what I consider our regular events programming schedule, which means that for the first time since 2019, we will be bringing back Children's Day on Sunday, May 1st from noon to 4. That is an activity, a wonderful day filled with activities downtown that involves our shops, restaurants, a block party on Pleasant Street, and entertainment as well. We follow that up about a month later on Saturday, June 11th, with the Market Square Day Festival and 10K Road Race from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And then we round out our spring-summer schedule with Summer in the Street. That's 5 Saturday evenings in July, beginning on July 2nd. And that's, of course, the closure of Pleasant Street between Porter and the Square. All information for those events can be located on proportsmouth.org. And I want to close this evening by reminding all of you and the community as well, kind of making an appeal to you. Now that many of us in the cultural and community nonprofits are coming back, I'm a little concerned that there's a sense of exhaustion and amnesia related to COVID. And you see us doing things, or will see us doing things, and think we're okay. Well, we're not exactly okay. We still have a long ways to go to recoup our lost revenue. For example, Pro Portsmouth lost about $150,000 over the 2 years where we were shuttered and couldn't do most of our events. So I just want to make sure whether you're supporting us or anyone else, please do so. And that's with your gifts, with your time, because it's still going to take a few years for us to come out of this and be successful. And my third and final point is kind of a nonprofit dream, if you will. And that is, I know it might be a stretch or impossible, but in seeing the unfortunate news to where the North Church is selling off their Spinney Road property, I was thinking, boy, wouldn't that be an interesting location to have a nonprofit center? And that's all I have for you this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. Next up, we have Lisa Rappaport.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Rappaport. I live at 139 South Street in Portsmouth. I wanted to first of all just congratulate Addie, who I had the great pleasure of watching in the spelling bee at Little Harbor during his first spectacular run to the state bee. And the kid is an amazing speller and just an amazing good human and represents the very best of our public schools. So that's awesome. I also wanted to thank everyone on the council for continuing to make these meetings accessible to the public via Zoom. I had a childcare issue tonight and couldn't attend in person. And while I see huge value in having public meetings and being able to interact face to face, I applaud the effort to keep a Zoom option available as much as possible so that people who can't attend for whatever reason in person can still participate. I wanted to speak briefly in support of two very important environmental matters that are before the council. I wanted to voice my support for allocating $50,000 in climate action plan funding, and I also wanted to voice my support for a motion from Councilors Denton and Cook to amend the capital improvement plan to add $150,000 in funding over the next several fiscal years to provide electric vehicle charging stations in Portsmouth. I know that we have many competing needs in our community that urgently need to be addressed, but I don't think we can understate the importance of looking at climate change head on as a seaside community that has so much of our commerce and tourism and housing and day-to-day life tied up with very real effects every year of climate change. When we're seeing days that are 60 degrees and then 20 degrees and it's snowing and then we're out on the water the next day on our boats, I think we can all see it firsthand. And I personally would say that I considered an electric car a few years ago, and the main reason I didn't get one is I wasn't sure I'd be able to charge it up easily enough to commute and get where I needed to go reliably. And I have a hybrid vehicle, but I certainly think we can see the clear advantages socially, financially, and environmentally of having fewer gas vehicles in our community. So I hope that you will support these measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And with that, I would ask that, Chris Madden, please return. State your name, your address, and you're here to talk about the Portsmouth Maritime Folk Festival.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, councilors, Ms. Conard, thank you. My name is Chris Madden. I live at 106 Langford Road in Raymond. And as you said, I'm the president of the Portsmouth Maritime Folk Festival. And I'll sing you a song, a good song of the sea. Away, Rio. I'll sing a good chorus if you'll sing it with me. And we're bound for the Rio Grande. The Portsmouth Maritime Folk Festival was founded in 2000 by Portsmouth residents Jeff Warner and Peter Contrastano. And for 20 years, it brought the music of the sea to the streets of Portsmouth. Some top names from the folk and traditional music world, Gordon Bach, John Roberts and Tony Barrand, Robbie O'Connell, and Portsmouth's own Jeff Warner. Also featured the amazing talent of the Portsmouth Seacoast area, bands like Great Bay Sailor, Mudhook, Two Old Friends. In 2019, the board, which had basically been the same people running the festival for the last 20 years, decided they were done, they were a little burned out, and they announced that it would be the last festival. The community that had grown up around it over those 20 years, people like me when I moved to town in 2008, was amazed to find this fantastic event practically on my doorstep. We said, no, we're not letting you stop. I got shoved to the front of that parade, and I'm now the president, with an amazing group backing me up as my board and our volunteers. And I'm pleased tonight to announce our headliners for this year's festival. David Coffin, who's had a long history of interpreting New England history and music, and is now a TikTok star, due largely in part to a repeatedly viral video taken in Market Square at a previous festival. Vienna Carroll, who's an interpreter of African American history and music from New York City, with a particular focus on African American sailors and their role in American history. And Cliff Haslam, an Englishman who now lives in southwestern Connecticut and has hosted the legendary shanty sing at the Griswold Inn in Exeter for I don't know how many years. And we'll be announcing more performers as they are finalized. So there's an item on the consent calendar. We're asking for a few things from the city. We are looking forward to coming back to the streets this fall, last weekend in September. We'd love to have your support, and we'd love to see you there at our festival. So it's goodbye to Sally and goodbye to Sue, away, Rio. And them that says listening, it's farewell to you, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Don't often have folks come up and literally sing for their supper when there's something on the agenda, but good on you. And Hershey, I wish I had called you up before that. That's a tough act to follow.
I know. Well, I actually do sing, but I'm not going to do that. And it would probably be like YMCA, and then we'd all have to get up, and we'd all, forget it. I live at 11 Sterling Lane in South Berwick in the great state of Maine. I'm sorry to tell you. I am the
Nobody's
executive director of Seacoast Outright. We are going into our 29th year here and have moved recently to the community campus. Thank you for that. We are putting on our 9th Pride event. There will be a march or a parade, depending on your point of view, which begins in Market Square and ends at the Strawberry Bank Museum field with a rally, a marketplace, about 100 vendors, food trucks, a main stage. We're really going to beef up our entertainment this year. We traditionally ask the mayor to open and make a speech if you're available June 25th. Mark that date on your calendar. Yeah, so that will be our event. Thank you very much for your support. I want to just add that it has been a tough 2 years for our LGBTQ kids. Our mission for 29 years and our sole mission has been to support lesbian, gay, bi, trans, and a few other kids in the Seacoast area and during the pandemic throughout New Hampshire. We've seen many more calls than we usually get. Our kids have increased amounts of anxiety, depression, and suicidality, and during the pandemic it's been even worse than we've seen before. We're all looking forward to getting out of this funk, and we've gone back to our live meetings at South Church, thank goodness, and our parent support meetings are up and running again, and we look forward to having a great celebration. In 2019 we had almost 5,000 people, I believe, so we're looking forward to a really great event. And we're also reaching out to more community partners to come march with us. We feel like that's a great way to coalition build, and we're hoping, of course, that the entire city council will come out and be good allies or one of our letters and march with us as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Hershey, and for all the work that you do. It's appreciated, the city of Portsmouth. And
Thank you, Mayor.
we'll be there. Thank you. With that, no other speakers. I'll close the public comment session. Next up, public hearings and vote on ordinance and or resolution. This is the continued public hearing of the CIP. We will have public comment on this. There is no time limit, as I've stated before, but if you want to speak, please hold that 3 minutes in your heart and come up and speak on that. It does not have to be in song form as well.
I did train in opera, but I'm not sure you want to hear that tonight. Sue Polidora, 245 Middle, and I am here to speak on behalf of the newly formed Cemetery Committee. It was a blue ribbon committee until recently that the City Council approved it to be a regular committee. And I'm here just to remind you about it, about the history of, we have a lot of cemeteries, at least 6 of them that are very, very historic. And the last commission ended in 2016, and pretty much nothing has happened other than cutting the grass in many of the cemeteries. I'm just here to reiterate to you the history, and not only in New Hampshire, but also in Portsmouth. Many people nowadays don't even realize that New Hampshire was one of the 13 original colonies. Believe it or not, some people don't know that. And that we have a very strong place in history. We had the very first self-government constitution that was signed in Exeter, New Hampshire, but many of the representatives were from Portsmouth, on January 5th, 1776, declaring self-government. It was the first constitution ever of the state of New Hampshire. That was 6 months before the Declaration of Independence. Portsmouth was the royal capital of New Hampshire, and since it was New Hampshire's only port, we had sea captains, Revolutionary War veterans, signers of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, former slaves, and many distinguished people in the areas of medicine, the science, who are buried in our historical cemeteries. And if you want me to Like I said, I always have a standing offer to anybody from the council that wants a tour of the North Cemetery. That's the one that I know the best, so you can take me up on that anytime. We just need good weather. Long before Portsmouth became a trendy place of restaurants and shops, it was a historic town. You had to remember back in the years where we have the urban renewal area, and Dorothy Vaughan came forward to preserve those things that were left in Portsmouth. There were beautiful mansions that were leveled just to put office buildings. And she was the precursor to what the conservation of the different buildings in Strawberry Bank is today. So we're more than just restaurants and shops. This is what came after. And I'm going to read you something. The state of New Hampshire requires that attention be given to those cemeteries via an RSA 289, and I'm going to read it. It's very short. Any town that has a town manager form of government may vote to not have a cemetery trustee by delegating all of the duties and responsibilities of cemetery trustee to the town manager as specified in RSA 289. For those years since the Cemetery Committee, Blue Ribbon Commission had been eliminated, we have been in violation of that RSA. Just wanted to point that out. Most seacoast towns, and I have checked several of them, have trustees in charge of their cemeteries, and they are, many of them are overseen by the local historical societies for maintenance and restoration. Since 2016, the city had not had a committee overseeing the cemeteries. Therefore, many graves and monuments are currently in need of cleaning and repair. The city has a responsibility and mandate for preservation of these very finite historic resources. If we don't take care of them, in a few more years, they may be all disappeared. I know that in the years that I have been looking after the North Cemeteries, many graves have been gone, the markers have been gone. We need to ensure that funding is available and proper to catch up with the maintenance, which had not happened in the last 6 years. I know that there is an appropriation being discussed in the CIP. I believe it needs to be increased to reflect the reality of the work that needs to be done in those cemeteries, and I'm just here to ask the council to approve an increase for that expense. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Hi, I'm Susan Sterry, and I'm co-chair of the new, which was official in February, Cemetery Committee. I believe, well, I know I sent out an email to you all directing you to this Parks and Greenery, and under that page there is a cemetery page, and in that is about, well, there's a 123-page document that
Susan, can you state your name when you get back?
yeah. I thought I was speaking loud enough for everybody. So to keep this very short and to the point.
Thank you.
This is just, we didn't have time to do a PowerPoint presentation, so this is definitely old school, and I will keep it very short. It's just a snapshot of why we should get, or not yet, request additional information. Just to put this in context, we're all new on this committee, and we're not familiar with all the processes that or procedures that go, and thank goodness we have Suzanne Woodland as our guidance. Late Friday, she gave us an email saying that there was still a chance for us to ask for additional funding for the Historic Cemetery CIP. So we scrambled and we just put this snapshot together of why we would request more money. Also, I think in your packet you did have the new committee, our committee. We put together a 2022 restoration plan. It's really, it's a nice little presentation, but you really need the context that I'm about to give you, so it makes sense. Back in 2013, the city of Portsmouth ordered or had a existing condition assessment report and restoration plan done by that Blue Ribbon Committee. In here, the one that you have now, it's 123 pages online. I took out the last section, which just briefly I'll go over, that tells you the main projects that they assessed. None of this information or pricing includes headstone restoration. We have over 3,000 headstones, and pretty much all of them have to have definitely cleaning, but also major restoration. And I did get an assessment or an estimate, and just to do 250, I think it was, headstones would be over $30,000, and we have 3,000 of them. And that doesn't include the cost of monuments. We have about 15 monuments, and some of them, the tops have broken off, or the tombs. We have, I think, 8 or 9 tombs that need to be repaired at this point in time, too. So just in this report, or the assessment, I spoke to a number of professionals that work just on cemeteries. They said they would estimate, no one would give me an estimation anyway. I walked the graves 3 or 4 cemeteries with different professionals to get an idea of what we were facing and bring us up to speed. These prices that were for 2013 at least have gone up 50%. So I recalculated on it on the pages that you have there, and just to do this part that had already been approved by the city back in 2013 to, look into this and put money aside is over $892,000. So we're way over $1 million already. So nor do we expect or ever anticipated that the city was going to pay for that this was going to be definitely a joint effort by fundraising, getting community involved, and with help from the city to contribute some money, but also to give us permission to go forward and get these projects done. The second sheet was, when we first started, I tried to get information on exactly what projects were done and what the costs were, which I've noted in here. We don't know all of them have been completed. So there could even be more money. So we're still in the process of getting a more complete picture of what actually has to be done and where the original cost, what the original cost was, so that we can go forward and have a starting point to see, how much higher really the prices are going to be. But I just wanted to include that in the packet. The other, I included from the EDGE report, the city also paid, I think it was in 2015, paid for a specialist, a cemetery landscape architect to come in. She went over North and Union cemeteries, which are located on Maplewood, and I think it was like a 40-page summary, but these 2 pages tell us what needs to be done to bring it up to, or restore it to what it was originally like. But she gave no prices, so I don't even have any idea what it would cost going forward. But just cleaning the headstones and repairing the monuments and everything down there would definitely show up how bad the edge, especially because the railroad tracks are right next to it. And the back wall is on the north pond, and that wall is almost totally deteriorated. So there are trees and shrubbery which have started to become uncovered on that backside. So they're either, eventually they're going to fall in or into the water or into the cemetery. So this would also be an additional expense in the next 5 years or however long this lasts. Unfortunately, there is a memorandum on the cemetery page, and this is what we were basing our request tonight on, and I'll read it to you real quick. As I said, it's on Parks and Recreation, so you have a copy of it online. And this was presented from John Bohanko back in July 27th, 2015. And the part that I highlighted was, for fiscal year 2015, the City Council set aside additional funding through the CIP, and staff has been working to make progress on the improvements identified within the assessment, 2013 assessment. The most recent CPI identifies consistent investment of $40,000 from the general fund in each of the next 6 years in order to make progress on the identified needs. It's pretty much the same. The committee was stopped or canceled in 2016, and nothing has been done since then. Maybe a third of what was suggested and approved back in 2013 has been completed. If anything, the conditions of these tombs and headstones, it gets worse every year, not incredibly, but it gets worse every year. So they really need to be done. So our suggestion was, or request would be, to pick up this program of dedicating $40,000 for the next 5 years. That would give us a considerable amount of time to reach out to the community. We already have a fundraising plan developed. We just have to wait until the appropriate time to do it, getting web pages up on site, which we're working on also. So I would request that if we could, or you would consider that commitment of $40,000 a year for the next 5 years, that would give us an additional $200,000 that we could count on to keep moving forward in whatever way we can, whatever the project, small, large, or what have you. So that's it. I did include a copy of what we've been using as a guide for a restoration. This is the federal level of how they suggest that we restore historic cemeteries, and then there's a copy of the New Hampshire Graveyard Association, which has been around since 1976, and I've spoken to the people in the state, and they don't rely, but they often recommend their information as a good source of how we should go forward. Any town could go forward and take care of their cemeteries and bring them back to a really good condition. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Susan. It's appreciated.
Yeah.
Does anyone else wish to publicly comment on the capital improvement plan?
We have one hand up on Zoom, Your Honor.
One hand up. Okay.
Rebecca O'Brien.
Rebecca, could you please state your name and address for the record?
Hi, this is Rebecca O'Brien. I'm at 396 Miller Ave here in Portsmouth. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. I do have some students and very young students in the background that were watching the presentation of Addie's Award, so congratulations again. So I was just calling in tonight really to support 2 items for inclusion in the capital improvement plan. The first is funding for the Climate Action Plan, which the city's Committee on Sustainable Practices really has been elevating with Peter's help and the City Council over the last several months. The other is to support the new motion for $150,000 to be added to the capital improvement plan for the electric vehicle charging stations throughout Portsmouth, and really just giving the city a chance to plan for EV charging infrastructure over the next couple of years. These 2 items really speak to me. You know, being an eco-municipality, I'm a concerned Portsmouth citizen, a member of the Committee on Sustainable Practices and the Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee. I'm just thrilled that the city is identifying these kinds of needs in the capital improvement plan, so thank you. Both really, in their own way, just bolster and support efforts to build resiliency. They plan for the future changes in our climate, and we're really starting to take advantage now of advancements in clean technology. So I thank you for your support and inclusion of these 2 items. That's it.
Thank you, Rebecca. Well, with that, I'm going to close the public comment on the capital improvement plan and will await a motion. Councilor Tabor?
Your Honor, I'd like to propose an amendment to the capital improvement plan.
Can motion first to adopt?
So we've learned this lesson. So we would, the sample motion would be to move to adopt the capital improvement plan as presented, and then we can amend that as required. So I'll await the move to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Tabor.
As you know, we met with the police commission. We looked at the police station future program. We had to do that in non-public for those of you out there because we looked at some of the real estate options and we need to obviously protect the city's interests in those. But my motion to amend would be to, based on that discussion, take the roughly $42 million and pace it a little differently. Rather than the current CIP of $1.4 million in FY22 and $40.6 million in FY23, it looks more realistic to do $1.4 million in FY22, $2.8 million in FY23, and then the balance $38 million in FY25. What we learned, I think, was that we can't get to architectural plans until we know what piece of land we're going to use. Because the piece of land, the shape of it and size of it will dictate whether we have 2 stories, or whether we have a long rectangular building or other formats. So we simply don't know yet and wouldn't have architectural drawings until we get the land choice done, and that takes us into a subsequent year. I'll ask the city manager maybe to further comment on it.
I'm happy to. Is there a second to that motion?
Oh, is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, I think there was. Was that all one motion? Okay. Hopefully not, Kelly. Hopefully that was, it's written shorter. Like,
So, Your Honor, to continue on the thread that Councilor Tabor started with, what this would do for the total percentage of net debt service to the budget, as would be the follow-up question I would anticipate from the council, that would change the numbers from what is proposed currently in your book of 8.18%, and that would increase it slightly to 8.21% in FY23, and it would push out to the out years of FY28, the first realization of the first full debt service payment, should this amendment be adopted.
any questions on that? Councilor Cook?
Would this amended option allow for exploration of design, not just at a potential new location, but potentially renovation and expansion of a current facility?
I'd defer to staff on that one.
I think it's fair to say all options remain on the table, and we would need additional information to understand both what the cost would be and the time frame to renovate here versus relocate elsewhere.
If there are no other comments, I'll simply state I think that there's a need, obviously, to do something in terms of the police station. I think that as part of that, we need a more robust public process once a parcel has been committed to, and so I'm in favor of supporting the updates to the CIP so that we can move forward to the point that Portsmouth is ready, and that's further defining this, and then come back when the money will be further appropriated to start work on that. So a roll call on this.
Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Tabor?
Yes.
Councilor Denton?
Yes.
Councilor Moreau?
Yes.
Council Bagley,
Yes.
Council Lombardi,
Yes.
Council Blaylock,
Yes.
Council Cook,
Yes.
Mayor McCachran.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Now we have to move the main motion as amended, if there aren't any other amendments.
I think we see, Councilor Blaylock?
I believe that the previous city council had authorized the 1.4 million approved in the FY22 CIP. I think they had approved it. We still need to authorize it?
That is correct. It was mentioned in the last year's capital improvement plan, but it was never authorized.
So if I may, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that the city council authorize the 1.4 million approved in the FY22 CIP by the previous city council to fund the preliminary designs of the new police station once prospective sites are chosen.
Second?
Procedurally, what we would do is, if that were the will of the council, we would bring that back for a public hearing to formally adopt with a 2/3 vote. So if that were the will of the council, we would bring that forward at the next meeting. Does that make sense procedurally?
Yes.
It does. Councilor Blaylock, will you rescind your motion at this moment?
Yes.
Okay. Kelly, you can.
Just X that out.
Yeah.
Got it.
Councilor Denton.
Thank you, Your Honor. I motion to amend that $150,000 be added to the capital improvement plan in FY24, FY25, FY26, FY27, and FY28 for a combination of level 2, 120/208 volt single phase, and level 3, 480 volt 3-phase electric vehicle charging stations throughout Portsmouth to include parking zone A.
Second.
Speak to that. As many of us have since heard, sea levels will rise by 1 feet by 2050 regardless of what any of us do. However, we only have 7 years to try to keep that foot from getting worse past that date. Around 80% of Portsmouth's greenhouse gases come from transportation, and this amendment will continue Portsmouth's leadership when it comes to electrification. The city has several electric vehicle charging stations already. We have an electric vehicle charging station ordinance on the books, and pre-COVID we had done several electric vehicle car shows. And initially, I had intended just to bring back the single electric vehicle DC fast charger, which I inserted in the capital improvement plan several years ago to be put downtown, back in the CIP, because it was supposed to happen this fiscal year. However, while some experts would love to see a single DC fast charger downtown right away, that would likely cost $130,000 for just 2 charging ports, so 2 vehicles in one station, plus at least $20,000 for the electrical box that would be required. And both the DPW and the Economic Development Commission, they raised valid points when it comes to it might make more sense to do level 2 chargers, the type that take several more hours to charge versus 30 minutes in the downtown area and throughout Portsmouth, while the prices of DC fast chargers go down. And there's also a good point which was raised that the federal funding which was made available through the bipartisan infrastructure deal for these kind of projects this upcoming year may not actually be able to be spent because a lot of these DC fast chargers are solely made from foreign parts, and the money in the law was made for products that are made in the U.S. So considering all those factors, I think it made the most sense to take the DPW's recommendation and the EDC's recommendation, hold off a year, essentially give them time to plan, but actually put serious money into the CIP so we could make sure we have infrastructure in place so electrification can happen. And again, this isn't just for the downtown, it's for throughout Portsmouth. And the wholehearted intent here is for there to be public-private partnerships. So private organizations who are willing to spend that much money on DC fast chargers could work with the city on such. With that, I will gladly relinquish the mic.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to emphasize that this proposal had quite a bit of support when we discussed it in the Sustainability Committee, on which Councillor Denton and I both serve. We all understand that we need to develop our infrastructure when it comes to sustainability, and we need to, in that sense, plan ahead for the future. We don't have these funds currently in our CIP when we know that a lot of people are buying electric cars, and we know that they're struggling with finding places to charge their vehicles. Some people are driving as far as Seabrook to charge their vehicles at a fast charger right now, people who live in Portsmouth. So we have to be planning ahead. I think it's really critical that we think down the road, how much infrastructure are we going to need in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And what this plan does is it provides us that opportunity to start doing that planning, not only for installations on the city's part, but like Councillor Denton said, to focus on public-private partnerships as well.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. The Assistant Mayor.
This is a new amendment.
So we got it.
We have to vote for it.
Any other comments on this amendment? Yeah. Councilor Lombardi?
Yes, I would just add to that the Economic Development Commission has been talking about this as well. They feel it is an important process to begin and to complete. It is up to the city to really emphasize this as a partial solution to the climate situation, as well as to just the need for people to be able to come to the city, take advantage of the city, and park and use the shops and use the restaurants. There are more and more electric cars on the road, and it will be an increasing necessity for us to have these charging stations.
Thank you, Councilor Lombardi. Any other questions? Councilor Tabor.
Yeah, states that are really at the leading edge of electrification like this are looking at a goal of charging stations every 50 miles. And I can't imagine that we would want to be, as a tourist destination, a city that's not one of those charging stations within 50 miles.
50 or 15?
50.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions, comments. I have a question for the city manager in terms of funding and allocations. If we have these in the CIP, would they potentially be available to future federal grant money if they are identified as shovel-ready projects?
That is my understanding, yes, and that's something that the Director of Public Works and I would continue to seek.
Okay. And then the second question received, or rather comment, received some emails around, I guess to put it one way, to pick winners and losers. If this was a CIP item in the 1912, I think, would we be putting gas stations in there? And that is a fair point that government necessarily shouldn't be picking winners and losers. But there's been a lot of investment from a federal standpoint when I think of highways and the investment the country has made in terms of putting the car as the forefront ahead of public transportation, trains, other things that were taken off the road so that we could have cars. So that is now a way of life. So how do we operate with a car to the best of the ability to also make sure that we don't see the impact of climate change as severely, and electrification and charging stations in a way that is not dependent upon one you manufacture at a very high cost, potentially overseas, but working within the United States to find these Type 2 level chargers, but still lay the case and framework for potential federal funding, as well as public-private partnerships around this, I think is a a smart way to go forward with this, and for those reasons, I will be supportive of this amendment to the CIP. The roll call vote, please, Kelly.
Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Tabor?
Yes.
Counselor Denton?
Yes.
Counselor Moreau?
Yes.
Counselor Bagley?
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Yes.
Counselor Cook?
Yes.
Mayor McCackron?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Any other amendments? Counselor, oh, that's right. Assistant Mayor, I totally forgot.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would move to make an amendment to increase the historic cemetery improvement, $15,000 to increase the sum to $40,000 a year in fiscal year 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. Now, wait a second.
Second.
Thank you. I think it's as we talk about projects that have passion, as we just did about electric vehicles, I do think our historic preservation is a huge passion in our city. And when we look back and we look back to the plan that was just presented to us and some of the information we have on the city website and in the attempts that we've made at this before, I think it's very important. I know there's a need for increased funding, and there's been requests for increased funding. I think the least that we can do at this point is match the funding that the city committed to almost a decade ago. And so I think that is why this is very important, and that's why I'm requesting this amendment to the council.
Thank you, Assistant Mayor.
Yeah, I would do.
Councilor Lombardi.
As a past chairman of the Historic District Commission, this is an issue that came up frequently before that commission, and I just think it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. With no further questions or comments, I will thank the Assistant Mayor for bringing this forward. I thank Susan and Sue, who spoke eloquently on this, and I would agree with the Assistant Mayor that history is a passion of Portsmouth. They identified much more need than they've asked for, and I think by doing this and committing to out years as well, we show that there is a commitment from the City of Portsmouth on this to strengthen and bolster their fundraising effort to help match and meet the need there. So appreciate this and the passion that's gone into this already. I'll look for a roll call vote.
Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Tabor?
Yes.
Counselor Denton?
Yes.
Counselor Moreau?
Yes.
Counselor Bagley?
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Yes.
Counselor Cook?
Yes.
Mayor McCackron?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Councilor Moreau.
I'd like to make a motion, an amendment to the motion that we move the Elwyn Park traffic calming fiscal year 24 funds of $160,000 to fiscal year 23, and that the fiscal year 25 funds of $1.5 million be moved to fiscal year 24, bumping each of those up a year.
Second.
And I just think that we're at a stage where we probably need a little bit more public input, and we need a little bit more time to finish some of the designing and the drainage and making sure that this project, it's a very important one. We want to make sure it's done, but I don't think that we'll be ready to bond it or actually start construction until fiscal year 24, which I like to remind everyone actually starts in July 2023, because I know our fiscal years can be complicated when we talk about them. So I think that this would be a really important project to put a little bit more design behind it, a little bit more maybe public input and public buy-in, as people have put, and that then we'll be ready to move forward with construction in fiscal year 24.
Any comment? Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I just want to say this is a very important project. This doesn't, putting this off, it doesn't mean it's not any less important. As we did mention last meeting, Peter Rice did say that this is tied to several other projects. So if we just moved ahead, it would cost the city more. It wouldn't be efficient. So we are trying to do the best thing for the city of Portsmouth and the best route to make it a safe way for Dondero School and Elwyn Park. That's all I'll say.
Just if we could call up Peter Rice, just had one question for him, City Manager. Peter, just a quick question for you. Specifically, does moving this affect our ability to provide the services as we've outlined them or laid them thus far, moving this up in the CIP by a year.
So the proposal is to push up everything a year, but not put all the funding into 23, meaning that the construction would aspirationally be in FY 24, which is July 23, as you pointed out. There are design-related aspects to this project that may take longer than the goal to meet that schedule. Those things include drainage impacts down along Harding Road, which are tied to the Elwyn Road side path project. That being said, I think this is a reasonable approach on how to move the project forward. As Councilor Moreau indicated, there are some items that need to be brought to consensus. And to get to that point, we need to get the design to a point where residents see what it's going to look like, what the configuration of the road is going to look like, and they understand the changes to the road, the aesthetics and other things associated with it. So I'm comfortable with the proposed approach, and the challenge for us is there are a lot of projects that are on the plate for us, and this is a significant effort to get it designed and get public input to make sure that we understand the goals of the neighborhood and develop consensus to push it forward. So I believe it's something that's achievable, but it's going to require some looking at workloads and things like that. So I'm confident that I understand the council's priority, and we will work with staff to make it happen as expeditiously as possible.
I'm sure Addie can spell that word pretty easily.
I can't. Spell check.
On just a follow-up on that, if we are not to meet that deadline in terms of the design work, or the design work as sometimes does, runs into public opinion that is different from what we set out to accomplish at the beginning, would we simply push that a year later in terms of funding, or would that be allocated before the design, or before the design got consensus?
What would happen is you would identify it as something for bonding next year. We would get authorization to go to bond, and we wouldn't bond it until we were certain that the project was moving forward. So it enables the project to move forward. It definitely gives it some impetus, but we would not bond it until we knew we had a project in place and ready to go, because it's no sense incurring the costs associated with the bonding until we really need it.
Thank you, Peter.
Yep.
All right. With that, I will have a roll call vote.
Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Tabor?
Yes.
Councilor Denton?
Yes.
Councilor Moreau?
Yes.
Councilor Bagley?
Yes.
Councilor Lombardi?
Yes.
Councilor Blaylock?
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
Yes.
Mayor McCachran?
Yes.
Unanimous?
Are there any other amendments? Councilor Cook?
I move to amend the appropriation for the Climate Action Plan to increase the number from $50,000 in fiscal year 23 to $100,000 in fiscal year 23.
Is there a second?
Second.
The reason that I'm making this amendment is that the Sustainability Committee has already been discussing the process of creating a climate action plan and the scope of that climate action plan. And in those discussions, they've identified several neighboring cities who have developed climate action plans in recent years. And the estimates that they're seeing for those climate action plans are between $125,000 and $200,000 for a climate action plan. I'm concerned that if we move forward with a $50,000 budget for a climate action plan, we're going to see a reduced scope in that plan, because that's what the committee is already talking about, is reducing the scope and limiting the scope of the plan rather than having a comprehensive plan because of limitations of $50,000. So either we're going to have a limited climate action plan, or we'll have to come back to the council for an additional appropriation. And so that's one of my concerns. That's not saying that we'd have to spend $100,000. It would say that there's $100,000 there. Of course, something like that goes out to bid. And then we would see what our bids look like.
Councilor Denton?
I wholeheartedly agree. The Sustainability Committee has been working on this, and they've identified numerous comparable plans which cost far more to produce. And just to make sure everyone's clear on what a climate action plan is, essentially, it will be a plan on how city staff can execute ways to save money and plan for the future. Because a lot of these things which will be proposed will actually save money for the city and for the taxpayer in the long run.
Any other questions or comments? I guess I have one. What is the timeline to develop this, and would this money expected to be outlined or used in this upcoming fiscal year? Or would this be I guess to put all the follow-ups on this, would this be to create an RFP and a process of which then a climate action plan proposal could be brought back and voted on by the council?
Yes. It would be this upcoming fiscal year, so it would be FY 2020. We're in 2023 now, correct? Help me out here. So it'd be 2020.
We're in 22 now.
We're 2022. So it'd be 2023 is when the request for proposal would go out. We would make the selection, it would come back, and then ideally it would be completed and come back to the council for a vote for approval.
So, Councilor Cook.
I think the committee's they're thinking about this around, how would we define scope if the council does approve a climate action plan allocation in fiscal year 23. And so they're already talking about how do we do that if we get the funding for July for the fiscal year 23 budget. And so they're anticipating that, hoping that happens. And then they're hoping to develop this plan in a short period of time. I mean, the goal is, to move as quickly as possible, I think, as a committee to develop that climate action plan. So I would anticipate that it would happen in fiscal year 23 and it would not overlap into fiscal year 24.
Any other questions? I guess I just have one more. If what we're seeing from other towns is higher, I guess I do have. It was my understanding and impression that this was the money to start this process, to put it out to bid, of which we would then, writing the RFP, et cetera, putting that money out, and we could further have the conversation on whether or not this was enough at that point when we had bids in. I worry that we might send the message this is enough if it comes back and it's not, but I understand the desire to move forward with a comprehensive enough plan to get us started in the ballpark there, but if there's no further comment or question, I'll have a roll call.
Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Tabor?
Yes.
Councilor Denton?
Yes.
Councilor Moreau?
Yes.
Councilor Bagley?
Yes.
Councilor Lombardi?
Yes.
Councilor Blaylock?
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
Yes.
Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Any other amendments? Then a roll call vote on the CIP
Okay?
as amended
Yes.
numerous times.
Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Tabor?
Yes.
Councilor Denton?
Yes.
Councilor Moreau?
Yes.
Councilor Bagley?
Yes.
Councilor Lombardi?
Yes.
Councilor Blaylock?
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
Yes.
Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
As we go on, we have now a public hearing. Before we get there, I just would like to simply state on the CIP and the process that we go through. it's not intended to be a project tracker. It is intended to be, how we describe to spend our money. I think that one thing we will do as a council over the next year is figure out how do we bring more transparency to the public around this process. Just because if it's in the CIP doesn't always necessarily mean it's going to happen, and priorities. So I'd like us to work to in addition to the CIP, have a project tracker that we can help residents of the city understand that. But I appreciate all the work that both the planning board, city staff, and now the council have put into the CIP, and I'm confident that it represents the goals that we have. Next is our public hearing adoption of resolutions. Resolution pursuant to RSA 72:39-B, the city hereby amends the elderly exemption based on assessed value for qualified taxpayers such that the exemption shall be available only when the qualifying taxpayer or taxpayers have a net income of not more than either option 1, proposed increase of elderly exemption by Social Security cost of living increase, stated as single, 46,124, increase of 2,196, or married of 63,108, there's increase of 2,708, or option 2, proposed increase of elderly exemption by November to November consumer price index, single of a 44,829, increase of 901, or married 61,638, increase of 1,238. Option 3, proposed increase of elderly exemption is to do nothing, and the elderly exemption shall remain unchanged except as amended hereby. So we will need to choose one of these two options. I believe we have Roseanne here to answer any questions or present. Roseanne, please come up.
Well, my presentation is exactly what you just stated.
Could I have saved myself talking? I've talked so much tonight.
You did my presentation for me.
The
only other thing I would add is that the finance director and I would state that this was add an additional 8 cents overall to the tax rate for the exemptions that we have currently on file or on record.
And 8 cents, what is 1 cent for the folks watching at home for the first time? What is 1 cent equate to in terms of a budget?
So you have to ask Judy.
If I remember correctly, it's like 60 grand?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if anybody can see you, folks.
So it goes by the whole value, the whole assessed value. So we're about 6.5 billion, somewhere in there. So it's like $6,500 equates to 1 penny.
Okay.
Okay. That's a pretty small.
Are there any questions of the council for Zan? Councilor Bagley.
I don't have a question. I was just going to make a motion.
Okay.
I motion that we adopt option 1, and if I have a second, I'll speak to it.
I'll second.
I think we know in the community that it's difficult for seniors on fixed incomes to stay in their homes as values rise, which is a good thing for our city, but it's a challenging thing for those on fixed incomes. So I think, especially with inflation where it is today, choosing the option that gives the most benefit to those on fixed incomes would be a wise choice for this council to make.
Any other comment? A roll call vote on the proposed amendment of option 1.
Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Tabor?
Yes.
Councilor Denton?
Yes.
Councilor Moreau?
Yes.
Councilor Bagley?
Yes.
Councilor Lombardi?
Yes.
Councilor Blaylock?
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
Yes.
Mayor McCachran?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
And I actually, Roseanne, I'll let you read the second one, since I'm tired of hearing myself.
Well, I can say the same as the first one, except for it's disabled, but I'll read it.
No, okay, then that's, as long as that's fine for the record here. Do we have a motion for option 1, 2, or 3? Councilor Bagley.
I will make the same motion for option 1 for the same stated reasons.
And second.
Could we have a roll call vote?
Yep. Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Tabor?
Yes.
Counselor Denton?
Yes.
Counselor Moreau?
Yes.
Counselor Bagley?
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Yes.
Counselor Cook?
Yes.
Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Roseanne, I have a separate question for you. So we've increased the income limits, but that is one of two qualifications that either a senior or somebody that qualifies for the disabled exemption must meet. The other is assets that they currently have outside of their home. Our income or our asset level is currently $175,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
I would like to see option of moving that up to $500,000. And if we can do that, we will require a public hearing. The reason for that is that many living on a fixed income are doing so drawing down from any retirement that they have. I believe that the $175,000 number precludes too many people from having to choose on whether or not they are going to be able to stay in their home and continue, living longer lives as we hope they all do, and having to make pretty tough choices at home. So at a future meeting, I would like to be able to see a similar option given to increasing the asset limit that we have. And do I need to make that in the form of an amendment, or I'd ask for somebody to make that that motion?
I would move that, Your Honor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Roseanne.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Your Honor. I supported that and motioned that because, as many of us have done, going out door to door, I encountered one of our residents, elderly, on a fair amount of medication, and we talked about the tax break for, and she said, I don't qualify, I have too many assets. And she named the figure. It was not a large figure that she had. So this is very real, and I think it can help a lot of people. And I don't think it will end up costing the city that much, really.
Well, I look forward to having that presentation, and I think that there's a lot. I've too found that many people did not qualify. It is will still be tied to income in this case, whether or not they draw down from their retirement or not. But I'd like to have that conversation and put it ahead, knowing that there's an April 15th deadline for these, given that this is a later motion or presentation than I've asked for. There might be some leeway, and Roseanne, if you could speak to that.
The statute says April 15th is the date for qualifications, but given the climate today and then the actions that the city council wants to take, I would look at every application that came in to try and qualify for it after that date.
Thank you very much, Roseanne. Okay.
Your Honor?
Yep.
With Roseanne sitting right there, I motion to suspend the rules to bring forward item 15A regarding the service-connected total disability tax credit.
Second.
All right, let me pull this back up.
Suspension of the rules, I can't remember. It's been so long since we've done it. Do we need a roll call vote on this?
You do not need a roll call vote.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Your Honor, I move to increase the service-connected total disability tax credit from $3,500 to $4,000 prior to April 1st, 2022. And the actual resolution is on page 188. Would it make sense to read that into the motion? No? All right.
You don't have to. I have.
Okay.
It's there.
All set.
Second?
I'll second.
All right, so big picture, if you are an honorably discharged veteran that owns residential property in Portsmouth, where you actually live, you have until April 15th to apply for a tax credit if you've not already applied for one. There's several tax credits in Portsmouth. The big three are the standard optional tax credit, which has existed for several years. It's $500. That was for veterans who served during certain time frames. Second one, which was created back in 2017, was a $500 tax credit for veterans who did not serve during those particular time frames, so it leveled the playing field. The third one, which we have in front of us tonight, is the service-connected total disability tax credit, which is currently at $3,500. It had increased by $100 a year up until it was capped at $2,000 back in 2007. Then back in 2019, the City Council increased it to $3,200. So essentially, if it increased $100 every year, if it hadn't stopped, and then it continued to allow it to increase up until it reached $4,000. So it's been increasing slowly for reasons which have already been stated. I think it would be beneficial to our fully service-connected disabled veterans. So that's a 100% disability rating from the VA, or there's some other definitions in here. I believe it's double amputee, so on and so forth. But it would be nice to increase that $500 this year to help out veterans and max it out at the $4,000 cap.
Councilor Lombardi.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a veteran of the Vietnam War, and most Vietnam vets don't talk about it much. They just don't. But I know what it's like to come home with scars, and those people who have scars that are so deep that they're considered 100% disabled, I think that this is the least the city could do for those people. So this has my full support.
Thank you, Councilor Lombardi. With that, all in favor?
Aye. So we'll bring that back at the same time. We'll do the elderly asset level. Did you want any type of presentation on that? As far as effective tax rate or anything like that?
Yeah,
or?
that would be great. And for anyone curious, there's currently 45 disabled veterans who are on the rolls now. So more may apply. Hopefully anyone listening to this, if you know a veteran, especially a disabled veteran, encourage them to apply for one of these by April 15th.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne.
Don't go far, Roseanne.
Oh, we've made it to the city manager's item, which require action. But since we've moved this forward, we're still at kind of the beginning of the meeting. So, city manager,
Thank you,
floor is
Mayor.
yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. You have a lengthy explanation in your comments from me, but long story short, the planning board took up this matter at their February 17th meeting. The board voted at that time that the council follow the recommendation from the city assessor. They voted unanimously to deny the request for restoration of involuntarily merged lots requested by the property owner.
Councilor Bagley?
Your Honor, I spoke with the residents involved with this request, and they aren't fully aware of the whole process and how everything was supposed to work, and they're in the middle of changing legal representation, so they asked that this be postponed until the April 18th meeting. So,
is that
I guess that would be, the motion would be to postpone until April 18th.
Second.
And I guess I'll speak to it at this point if I can. I did talk with Attorney Sullivan earlier today to make sure that this was procedurally something that we could do.
Okay. Attorney Sullivan?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you like to speak to the advice that you gave Councilor Bagley?
It was exactly as he said. He requested, would there be any problem that occurred for either the city or the property owner if the matter was postponed to the April meeting? And I said, no, there would not be.
Okay. Any other comments on this? I guess I have a procedural question on unmerging of lots or not unmerging lots. This is a process that came out of the previous council. Typically, all mergers of lots or unmerging of lots came to the city council before, and at which point we would put them to the planning board that would then receive a decision or advice from our city assessor, namely Roseanne Lentz, on whether or not the documentation existed for this to be a voluntarily or involuntarily merged lot. The planning board would make the decision, and then the council would vote on whether or not to do that, as we were the final arbiters of that. There was some disagreements with the previous planning board and the previous council on this, and from that we created a new process of which we would send all requests for an involuntarily merged lot to the city assessor, and then her recommendation would be sent to the planning board. As I understand it, both the city assessor and the planning board have denied this to be a involuntarily merged lot. So my question would be, there are other recourses as we have outlined in the packet, but I don't understand, I suppose, how postponing this would change that process at all. Could Councilor Bagley?
I think there's a good chance that this may be withdrawn completely. It's just to give these homeowners a chance to kind of process how to navigate this, to speak with their new council because they switched council, and evaluate the other alternatives before we completely vote on it.
Okay. Maybe a follow-up question would be then, what, if we postpone, I guess those other legal avenues would be, and I guess I have to pass the gavel here. Passing the gavel to the good assistant mayor. What other legal avenues would we be opening up? It seems like the planning board has made their decision as informed by the city's assessor in this matter. So would love to hear what the other alternatives are that would preclude us from also voting on this tonight.
If I might, as the planning board representative and having seen a lot of these over the years, our determination was based off of the record that was in front of us. We got numerous and numerous letters from different people, including the prior owner, who in my opinion really gave us proof that a prior owner had considered this one lot by multiple actions, and one of which even attempting to subdivide it at one point previously. So you wouldn't go to subdivide a lot if you already thought you had 3 separate lots, and that's sort of one of the acts that through the statute really tells us that it was indeed it was merged and the owners knew about it and they consented to it, basically, so it wasn't involuntarily merged. That in line with the addition of the fact that the deed actually only describes 1 lot. It doesn't describe 3 lots. Many of these we get, they'll list lot number this, lot number that, lot number this. This doesn't. It says by the road, it's 150 square foot square, right? So I had spoken to Councilor Bagley a little bit earlier about this, and I have agreed to reach out to the homeowners and talk to them about what their options are, because it is in my opinion, a pretty simple subdivision that could happen to get their goals. So I was going to reach out to them tomorrow and try to discuss this with them. Okay.
Does this, I guess by tabling this or allowing them to remove this, does this, if, I guess the order of events is that we would not, if this goes as you expect it would, we would not be voting on this at any point in the future?
Correct, if they take my advice, yes.
Okay. City Attorney, do we have the option of not voting on this?
Your Honor, you have a motion in front of you to postpone it. If that motion should fail, then in fact you'd be required to vote upon it. It'd be in front of you tonight.
Okay. So if it's a motion to postpone, it's a future possibility of it not coming back to the council. And even though it has been requested and referred to us by the planning board for action with a recommendation, we would not have to take that up.
That's correct, Your Honor, if the motion to postpone should pass.
All right. So we will reach okay. I'll take the gavel back. Questions. Thank you, Assistant Mayor.
Your Honor, if I could just, one more thing. I guess what I'm trying to accomplish here is instead of us as a body rejecting a homeowner's request, let's see if we can find a better solution where we don't have to do that.
Certainly, if there's another solution, but from the process in terms of a unmerger of lots, there is a right to unmerge and voluntarily merge lots. This did not meet that qualification as identified by our city assessor nor our planning board. So there are other alternatives that were discussed in the packet, and hopefully one of those meets the needs of the homeowner, and the property owners can find relief in that. So all in favor of postponing?
Aye.
Thank you, Roseanne.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is the one manager item there?
right.
Jeez.
I'm reading through that.
Next up is the consent agenda.
I make a motion, we move to adopt the consent agenda. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
No songs, no nothing, just aye? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to that event, as the Pride event as well, and Portsmouth Babe Ruth, all of these. Next is presentation and written communications, email correspondence, a
Move to
sample
accept.
motion. All right.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is the report back from the EDC, Economic Development Commission, regarding the inclusion of funding for the EV charger installation in the CIP.
Move we accept and place on file, Your Honor.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And then finally, C, Cemetery Committee's Historical Cemeteries Restoration Project, sample motion. Move to refer to the city manager to establish a date for the presentation by the Cemetery Committee at a future city council meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Here we go. Appointments under my name to be voted on. We have, and I'm going to group these by committees to save some breath. Duncan McCallum to the Cemetery Committee. Elaine Apentang Butts, Kathleen Boduck, Lawrence Cataldo, William Gatchell, Lori Soloway, Peter Somsich to the Citywide Neighborhood Blue Ribbon Committee. Ann Weidman as an alternate to the Economic Development Commission. Heinz Sachs Schubert as an alternate to the Historic District Commission. Jeff Stern to the Library Board of Trustees. Jason Brewster, Francesca Marconi Fernald, Chris Gallo, Stephen Marison, Stephen Phillip, Devin Quinn, John Simon, Richard Smith, Mark Stetner, and William Townsend to the Pierce Island Committee. Kathleen Bergeron to the Portsmouth Housing Authority. Lauren Kranz to the Recreation Board. Phyllis Eldridge to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Sample motion, move to approve the appointments as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next up, we have done Councilor Denton and Councilor Lombardi's. Look forward to hearing the report back. And we've also taken Councilor Denton and Councilor Cook. So we're on to Councilor Moreau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to give an update, and I will try to, at every meeting, give you as short or as long update as needed. We have worked very hard on our land use committee, and based off of some of the work that we've done, I have listed in here our goals and objectives. I would really like to know, because I'd like council guidance as this committee goes forward, as to whether or not these goals and objectives are in line, because I want it to all be in line with obviously the goals that were set by this council. And also, anytime there are any input or ideas that you guys get, feel free to send them to me so I can bring them to the committee, or if you have anything here now that you would like the committee to look at. That's why I want to make sure that I get the opportunity to speak to you all at each of our meetings. I will try not to overbear you too much, but if I also included all of the minutes from our first meeting, the structure that we're working on, and how we're going to really try to take a look at everything. So with that, I would open it up to anyone who might have questions or input.
you, Councilor Moreau. Councilor Denton and Councilor Denton.
Thank you, Honor. So 3 ideas which have been floated around over the years, which I would like feedback on, or at least the committee to consider. The first one would be amending the zoning of our commercial areas to allow housing. The second one is mandating instead of incentivizing affordable housing.
Can't mandate. Sorry, it's under state statute. We can't mandate affordable housing. What we can do is highly incentivize or give that as the only incentive, right?
That's fair.
But we can't say you have to give it to us, unfortunately, under our state.
I thought Rye had done that. Either way.
Yeah.
The third one, and I know it sounds controversial, but would be eliminating single-family zoning.
Ooh, that might be controversial, but I'll write that one down. All right.
Thank you.
Amend to allow housing in commercial, right?
Correct.
Increase workforce housing incentives. Eliminate single-family residential zones. I feel like I missed one. Was there 3?
Those were the 3.
Okay, sure. I didn't miss anything. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions from the council? Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you. I just want to thank Councilor Moreau and all the work she's done. I'm happy to join her on this board, and I'm just excited for all the work that we're going to do.
Councilor Tabor.
Yes, I want to commend Councilor Moreau for her leadership on this and just amplify one of the elements of the conversation that you had at your first meeting. Nick Cracknell from the Planning Department talked about the need to update planned unit development language. And, you know, some of us talked about, could you even build Atlantic Heights today?
Probably not.
Probably not. And yet, here's a community with density, with yards, with green space, with a neighborhood feel. So, you know, I thought Nick was onto something there. I hope we explore that.
Thank you. And Councilor Moreau, I echo the sentiments and appreciation for the work that has gone into this and will go into this. Appreciate the updates. And the other members of the committee, Assistant Mayor and Councilor Blaylock. Just one note on you're correct, we cannot mandate. We are a subdivision of the state of New Hampshire, so all our rules or abilities and powers that exist in the city of Portsmouth are as a result of powers granted to us by the state of New Hampshire. But on that, I would like to look as strongly as we can in terms of our zoning, our density bonuses, even going as far as saying, you know, are there restrictions that we could impose to get greater, value out of this? Right now, it's an extra floor. If it could be an extra, to lower requirement or lowering heights in areas that we could require more. So thinking of how, all of the tools in the toolkit that we can be used, but I do believe that is under Section 3 or C, restructure incentives to deliver greater public benefit. That is pretty wide and encompassing, and I think I also agree with the 2 working groups within the committee of supported market and the regulatory framework that we have. So great work, and if we do not have already, I would hope that we can put this work under, along with the meeting minutes, under a part of the planning department's website as a separate website that residents could have a one-stop shop for all things related to zoning, as well as potential resources that folks in the community that are struggling with housing can use to reach out for all potential state incentives that they might qualify for.
Excellent idea. I will make that request.
Thank
See
you.
if that's possible.
Councilor Moreau. Oh, I'm sure it is. We've got a big website. We put a lot of stuff on there. Next up is Councilor Bagley.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I'm requesting a comprehensive COVID bounce back plan, and the sample motion would be move for a report back from city staff on developing a comprehensive COVID bounce back plan similar to the previous COVID task force.
Second.
I'll speak to that. I learned from our last meeting that it's better to make a short motion and then speak to it after the fact. So to kind of give you the background on the idea is during the pandemic, multiple task forces were created that really leveraged the resources in the community for our economic well-being and our health and well-being. And I think what we need to do now is kind of duplicate that model, and primarily for kids, and I'll just read something here to kind of give you a sense, requesting a report back from city staff on developing a comprehensive COVID bounce back plan similar to the previous COVID task force. Organized as a blue ribbon committee for our citizens who have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, particularly children, individuals with mental health challenges, those with disabilities, and families with limited resources. Insight from our school department, health department, recreation department, library department, fire department, and local nonprofits that worked with underserved populations. The goal of the proposed task force is to identify the needs and solutions that can improve the well-being of the most significantly impacted populations. Can be implemented in the near and long term and potentially be funded with ARPA monies. City manager to identify appropriate funding sources for 2022. Of particular interest is finding low-cost, high-impact solutions. And I was lucky enough, the other day I ran into the fire chief getting a cup of coffee, and Station 1 was going over to Little Harbor at 7:55 in the morning for something they call Sunrise Squad. And I talked with Abby Frank, who created this in 2018, pre-pandemic. And what it is I'll read the blurb she sent me. Sunrise Squad. The intent of this group is to help our students build meaningful connections with adults in the Little Harbor School and larger Portsmouth communities. These students will have opportunities to participate in activities that they may not otherwise have access to while building social skills, working collaboratively, practicing problem solving and conflict resolution, increasing creativity, and having fun. And what I really loved about this is it gave kindergartners through 5th grade a chance to interact with the fire department once a month, and just have a lot of adult leadership roles. And I believe the library comes in one Friday a month, and then they have rotating other people that come in. And the kids are there for breakfast, or they've been recommended to be there by their teachers for just a little bit of a. We miss so many emotional connections in interacting with people, especially children in this very critical developmental point in their lives. And this is something that could be replicated in Don Darrow and New Franklin School, most likely. They did get a grant from the Clipper Foundation so that they didn't have to pay for this out of the teachers' pockets. So what this task force would do is identify things like this that we can do throughout the community that won't necessarily cost a lot of money, but will have a huge impact on everybody that's been affected by this horrible pandemic. So that was a bit long-winded, but I hope you got a sense of what I'm trying to accomplish here based on our previous experiences, and then looking forward for the next number of years. How do we recover in the long term from the damage that's been done because of the pandemic?
Thank you, Councilor Bagley. Councilor Blaylock, then Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Councilor Bagley, for bringing this up. I had the privilege of joining Chief Germain in the fire department to Little Harbor in the Sunshine Squad, and I must say it was a phenomenal program. I was honored to be part of it, and I'd love to be part of it more in the future. But it was really priceless experience for me. It was a great way to start the day, just brightening up, some young kids in Portsmouth, just giving them a nice day, and it brightened up my day as well. So I think stuff like this is very important as we bounce back from COVID. Unfortunately, I haven't been going all winter because we've had COVID and everything. So I look forward to programs like this. But thank you, Councilor Bagley, for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councilor Blaylock. Councilor Cook.
I'd also like to thank Councilor Bagley for proposing this. And I wanted to thank him in particular for including local nonprofits in his thinking around a Blue Ribbon Committee. A lot of our local nonprofits serve as a service to our community, especially those who are underserved in general in Portsmouth. And they're kind of like the first eyes and ears of where we're struggling as a community. It's really helpful to have them provide input to us, especially service industry nonprofits. So I really appreciate you thinking about them in addition to our schools, who of course are in on the front lines of helping children through this very difficult time, and thinking about this in terms of how we are going to use our ARPA funds to address those that are most impacted is really critical at this point. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cook, the Assistant Mayor.
Thank you. Like the other councilors, I can commend you on making this motion. I would request with the city staff as they develop this plan to make sure that we are looking at trying to recreate this program at some of the other schools. There's constant conversation in our community about the imbalance and inequalities that some of the elementary schools have seen, and I think that while this is a great program, I do think this is a program that does also highlight that inequality, that there are also children at Don Darrow and at New Franklin that would benefit from programs like this. So I think it's definitely something that should be highlighted in that plan, and trying to replicate this, as Councillor Bagley said, low-cost, high-impact programs like this.
Thank you, Assistant Mayor. Councillor Tabor.
Yeah, I think this is a great direction to go. I just, in order to make sure we maximize success, this motion would ask for the city staff to report back, and then the next step would be to form a task force. And as I understand it, we would draw from city departments, fire and police, as well as nonprofits.
Your Honor.
Councilor Bagley.
Maybe the city manager could speak to the departments and.
I'm happy to speak to the departments, and then maybe that will help inform the next step that the group wishes to take through the council's direction. But Councilor Bagley specifically was looking for input from school department, health department, recreation department, library, and the fire department. It could be that in our conversations among staff and department heads, we find other synergies to add to this conversation. But we would start with those, and I can tell you that all those groups mentioned would be very excited to start to contribute to this conversation.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bagley. One of the highlights of the last 2 years was the COVID response, citizen response task force. I think when government works well, it's harnessing the effort, of all residents. I think the city is in a unique position to coordinate amongst nonprofits, our own organizations, and then liaise where need has been identified and where we can use help in directing resources against that. Would love to see as part of this community members that are close to the situations that we exist, because while COVID is not over and it is not done with us, we are entering a new phase of living with this. We also have to acknowledge that the physical toll, while astronomical, there has also been a mental toll that exists with this, and it's going to require a lot of effort to make sure that we are applying strategically the resources that we have as a city and that exist in the community to effectively bounce back from something that is hard to imagine that will never go away completely and always leave a mark. So I appreciate this and look forward to the report back and how best we can approach this from a city standpoint. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Approvals of grants and donations. Grant award from Drinking Water and Groundwater Trust Fund for the amount of $111,500. Sample motion, move to approve and accept the grant for the City of Portsmouth to accept up to $111,500 from the Drinking Water and Groundwater Trust Fund as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And next up is the city manager's informational items.
Your Honor, this is follow-up from our new, not so new anymore, Chief Building Inspector, Monty Wolf. He is intent on moving with his team, in whom he has great pride, to get rid of the backlog, long story short, and then to move forward and shape the department in the leader that we've already seen him to be. So before you tonight, and as mentioned publicly, they've completed over 1,700 inspections since his arrival 3 months ago. He's excited to share that information. He's excited to work with the folks we have on the staff, and he's also put forth a remote inspections program to help describe in those instances where remote or virtual inspections would be allowed. So we wanted you to see firsthand his work.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilor Denton.
Actually, I have 2 items under miscellaneous.
Oh, if I just I just want to highlight the work that Shanti has done on this briefly. Councilor Moreau, on the topic of the inspection department.
Yes, absolutely. I was one of those people that got calls from many people over the term of this, and being in the real estate world that I'm in, I've heard it from many clients, many sellers, many developers, all the problems that went on. I experienced it myself when I actually had a new air conditioning system put in my office. It took over 30 days to get someone just to come and make sure it was installed correctly. I did let them know there was no way I wasn't using it in August, you know. They had to just wait. I was going to use it whether it was right or not. So it was really exciting to see the 17, whatever number 100 was, and the time period. I mean, I was trying to do the math, and that's like, you know, 20 plus a day if you really work it out. So that's truly amazing, and I truly commend the staff for being able to really turn this around and be innovative with the ideas of, you know, pictures and keeping the residents informed and part of the building process so that they know when their builders don't do what they're supposed to do, and then that doesn't, because that was another problem that was raised to me. So very exciting to see this progress, and I commend the city for making such great strides. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Moreau. Councilor Cook.
I also wanted to say thank you to the city manager for this report. I'm really encouraged to see these efforts to streamline this process for our residents, because it hasn't been easy. We all know that. And that's what happens when you're understaffed. And clearly we are very fortunate to have someone who's really thinking very deliberately now about ways to make this easier for residents and businesses. So I really commend him and you, and thank you.
Councilor Blaylock. Thank you, Councilor.
I want to echo Councilor Cook's thanks to the city manager and to building inspector. I heard this as well many times on the campaign trail. I've also heard it from both sides, from residents and from plumbers, electricians, and that side as well. And so I know this was a whole huge, very hard deal, but you handled it very well, and I can't wait to. Yeah, I'm just very excited. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just add to that? I'd like to thank 2 of the staff. In addition to Shanti working with a great team in inspections, Deputy City Manager Suzanne Woodland and Assistant City Attorney Jane Farini really helped to handle the triage and the transition and to help stand up Shanti as he started. So thank you to Suzanne and Jane, among many others. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager, and thank you to Suzanne and Jane and Shanti and his team. Oh, was it
everyone?
Everyone. This is something that I believe that government needs to be efficient and good in order for people to believe in it. I think that we saw and encountered a problem with the inspection department when COVID hit, completely changed our expectation. And, you know, looking back, of course, everybody's going to do home projects when they're stuck in their home, but that was not known then. And so just a couple points to call out. One, had a conversation with Shanti, just very impressed with him, and he would be the first, if he was here tonight, to talk about his team, and that he has been able to unlock the potential of his team. I think is just an awesome accomplishment. And you know, any great leader is somebody that knows that they can only do the work with the team. That hasn't precluded him from rolling up his sleeves. Just some points of the video inspection where that can be an efficiency. Photo inspection, that's great. Including the homeowner on the, as a requirement of any building application, to make sure that the homeowner is in the loop. The amount of times that folks had reached out to me personally to say, hey, what's going on? And it's because it's not a requirement. It is now to be in on those emails, and I think that brings a transparency that people can trust. And then finally, something that is huge is to have, as long as a homeowner is present, not to require the person that did the work to be on site for that inspection to happen is going to, work through this. There's more work that it needs to be done on working through, permits, but I am confident in the leadership of Shanti and the city manager for hiring Shanti to move forward in this process, and we should be proud as a city that we were able to overcome this, but that's only the beginning. So thank you again, city manager.
Thank you.
And then Councilor Denton has laid his cards on the table. He has a couple of things miscellaneous here, remembering that we still have to go back into non-public after this.
Plan to be short. So at the previous meeting, the council voted to refer what to do with food establishments on the city property that did not abide by the composter requirements of the single-use disposable ordinance to the fees committee. So that's a lot there. The fees committee actually met today. We discussed it with staff, with Attorney Sullivan, and what we came up with was, instead of an actual fee, it would be waiving some of the cost of the restaurants that do compost. And that would be done through a contract, because all of the restaurants that operate on city property will have a contract. And essentially, if they are composting, they would be able to have that portion of the fee waived. So instead of increasing costs, it would be rewarding good stewardship. And again, the reason for this is simply that food waste is the third largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and composting could cost up to $1,000 a month for restaurants to do. And we just think it'd be a good first step to help level the field. So with that said, I'm going to make a motion, and if the city attorney could correct me if I get this wrong. So I motion that $200 in outdoor dining fees be waived for food service establishments on city property that abide by the composting requirements of the single-use disposables ordinance. And I could say that again for Kelly if it helps.
Sure.
Yeah. Motion that $200 in outdoor dining fees be waived for food service establishments on city property that abide by the composting requirements of the single-use disposables ordinance. There's a second.
Second.
I guess first an inquiry on this is to bring it up in miscellaneous and not to bring it up at the next council meeting. Is there an urgency with the timeline in order to do this and not bring it up as a typical agenda item in 2 weeks' time?
I defer to the city attorney.
It's just showing that we are approaching the season and wanted to get a good start on it.
Okay. Councilor Murrah?
My only question is, are you just talking about like a one-time credit, or is this like something that's repeated or every summer or every month? I'm looking for a time frame.
The goal would be to ramp it up over the years, but here, restaurants doing outdoor dining, they could pay in installments, first installment, second installment. So if they do that, it would be $100 off the first time, $100 off the second installment, or $200 up front. It can all be done on the portal.
So it's just like per season?
Yeah, this time it'd be $200 this season, and hopefully ramp it up.
Thank you.
So no concern from the city attorney of not having this as a notice?
No, Your Honor. In fact, it was my recommendation of the fee committee today.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Any abstentions? Okay.
One last,
Oh.
real quick on this.
Oh.
So, just on a personal note, I'll be having a long-needed rotator cuff surgery through the VA in 2 weeks, so I may be out for a bit, but hopefully you'll be seeing me soon back here in a sling. So.
Okay. We wish you all the best, Josh. Hopefully it gets you back throwing softballs, beer league, anything that is.
Come through batting practice.
Thin off
My little league
curveballs
at the end of the meeting.
Curveballs, yeah, at the end of meetings. That's the joke. Okay. With that, we need to adjourn to non-public or enter non.
Make a motion to adjourn our public meeting and continue into our non-public session that we continued earlier.
Second?
And Bob, is that the correct motion? We can adjourn this meeting and go into, okay. All right. And we'll need a roll call vote on that.
Who seconded? Thank you. Okay. Assistant Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Tabor.
Yes.
Counselor Denton.
Yes.
Counselor Moreau.
Yes.
Counselor Bagley.
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi.
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock.
Yes.
Counselor Cook.
Yes.
Mayor McCackron.
Yes. Good night, Portsmouth. Thank you.